Ruth Bader Ginsburg, standing only 5 feet 1 inch tall with big gray eyes. Her love of justice was grounded in persistence faced with adversity, with a disarmingly sharp but unaffected intellect, and with a deep-seated integrity that ultimately brought her life's work to public prominence, popularity, and greatness that she never wanted or expected. RBG was born into the life and culture of Brooklyn in 1933. Her childhood was marked by hardship, including the loss of her older sister, as well as the death of her mother, who passed away the day before Ruth's high school graduation. The loss of her mother in particular motivated Ruth Bader to achieve the highest level of success possible for herself, and ultimately for millions of other women. She started her higher ed journey at Cornell and went on to study law at Harvard and graduated from Columbia, even as she was raising a child and supporting her husband Marty, who was diagnosed with and recovered from cancer. At one point, her professor invited the few women law students at that time and asked each of them to explain how it was that they were willing, by their presence, to deprive a man of the opportunity to study law. Ruth Bader Ginsburg secured her first clerkship in 1961, and after a few years, she started teaching at Rutgers Law School in 1963, which was where she began her work fighting gender discrimination. I've recently come to understand that RBG never saw herself as fighting for women's rights, but instead fought for equal access to citizens' rights. Ginsburg fought for federal law to be applied equally across genders. She wrote her first brief for the Supreme Court in the 1971 case, Reed v. Reed, which was the first time that the Supreme Court had struck down a state law because it discriminated based on gender. Famously, in Frontiero versus Richardson, she quoted the 19th century abolitionist Sarah Moore Gimke saying, "I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks." The true nature of the arguments of the time is even hard to conceive of today. Before Reed v. Reed, Ginsburg wrote later, "Neither legislator nor judges regarded gender lines as back-of-the-bus regulations. Rather, these rules were said to place a woman on a pedestal." Although Ginsburg liked to say this was more of a cage pretending to be a pedestal. In 1980, Jimmy Carter appointed Ginsburg to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. And 13 years later, in 1993, Bill Clinton nominated her to become the second woman ever appointed to the Supreme Court. In her acceptance speech, she thanked her mother, who she said was the bravest person she had ever known. "I pray that I may be all that she would have been had she lived in an age when women could aspire and achieve, and daughters are cherished as much as sons." Among her many important decisions, she gave the majority opinion for the court in United States versus Virginia Military Institute, which effectively strikes down any law that denies women full citizenship stature. Justice Ginsburg wrote, "Equal opportunity to aspire, achieve, participate in, and contribute to society." Ginsburg's integrity, intellect, and wit allowed her to rise above the partisan. Despite being on opposite ends of the spectrum politically, Ruth Bader Ginsburg maintained a close friendship with Antonin Scalia. There's a famous photograph that I love of the two Supreme Court justices riding on an elephant together, and an American opera called Scalia Ginsburg, which was created based on their playful relationship. In these polarizing times that we live in, we can use their friendship as an example of how we can come together by listening to differing points of view. I love the book, The Notorious RBG, a superhero who has inspired millennials and Gen Z youngsters. My daughter wears an RBG t-shirt with much enthusiasm. A whole new generation of women and girls have been exposed to her important work through countless means and the 2018 documentary RBG. as well as the witty and insightful prose of her legal opinions, which will live on forever and inspire generations to come. It should by now come as no surprise that when we lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg a few weeks ago, I knew we had to do something very special to remember her bravery and her commitment to building a better world, a stronger world. Well, actually, I picked the faculty leads from our Women's History Month celebrations, Professor Erin Miller and Professor Olivia Garcia, as well as our students in the pre-law program, and together, this team created BC's retrospective on the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a cultural icon, a champion of gender equality, who never stopped fighting for what she thought was right, down to her final day's last breath. Enjoy this programming.